Let the games begin.
And hello everybody and welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host Christian. Thank you very much for joining me on the podcast this week. Boy, do we have a week for you guys. So first of all, before we start off the podcast, I do want to mention I apologize for not having a podcast last week. I was taking care of some sick relatives, so family comes first in times like that. So I want to apologize for not having a podcast last week. There was some. It was a kind of light week last week. There was maybe two big real news items that I would have loved to dive into, but obviously that didn't happen. So I want to apologize for not having a podcast last week. So that is the first obviously case. The second case is that I may have fixed some technical issues that I was having 2 weeks ago when I was doing the podcast that I mentioned on here. Obviously I won't really realize it until I start editing, so we'll see how that turns out. But let's get right to it, shall we? Let's not waste any more time. Let's get right to the podcast this week. So the first thing we're going to talk about, as we always do here on the podcast, is trailer talk. So we have two trailers that I'm going to point out this week. The first one is probably one of the most ridiculous trailers to have come out, and probably going to be one of the most ridiculous movies to come out this year. That is the Hurricane Heist. Now, apparently this trailer has been kicking around online for a while, but it wasn't really until this week where it started picking up a lot of steam, so that's why I'm barely talking about it right now. So it's the Hurricane Heist, directed by Rob Cohen, who directed the Fast and the Furious movie, the first one, and also Triple X. And the movie takes place during a looming threat of a deadly hurricane that leads to a mandatory evacuation of the city. During this, a band of hackers and thieves take the opportunity to steal $600 million. However, they need the Treasury agent, who is played by Maggie Grace in the movie. She's the daughter from Taken, and of course, Lost, and a bunch of other projects. She has the password to the vault. Then she gets the help of storm chasers who happen to come across her when she's being attacked by these thieves and hackers. The storm chasers are played by Toby Kebbell and Ryan Wanton, I think that's how you say his name, from True Blood, to survive the storm and to also stop the robbery. So the Hurricane Heist, I knew about this movie. I saw the title for the movie for the year of releases. And I was like, oh, that seems kind of interesting, I guess. And I didn't know anything about it. It was one of those movies it's one of those rare movies that I didn't know anything about before it came out. So I saw the trailer for the first time in its entirety this week. I'd seen little bits of it before, but I saw the trailer for the first time in its entirety this week. And it is so ridiculous. It's one of those movies where it's like, you know what? That movie looks so dumb, but I'm gonna go watch it. It's cheesy. It is a cheesy trailer it's something that you probably expect from the Sci-Fi Channel if, you know, throw in some Sharknadoes or some sharks in the hurricane, and then you got yourself a Sharknado whatever number they're on right now. It's so ridiculous. But again, it's just one of those movies where it's like, you know what? This is a movie that I need, or I had a rough week at work, or I had a rough week or a month, year so far, and I just need something to turn off my brain and have some fun with it. Maybe get some friends together and go watch it. This is the perfect movie to do that, because this looks absolutely ridiculous. And again, it's going to be probably one of those movies that I end up go watch because, well, first of all, Toby Kebbell, I don't know how they got these people in it, but Toby Kebbell, obviously an amazing actor. Maggie Grace is in here, like I said, Ryan Content, I think that's how Wanton, I don't know that's how you say his name, but I apologize for that, but these are some quality actors, and they're in this. It just looks utterly ridiculous. I don't know if they just needed the paycheck, or I don't know what was going on, but or maybe this movie just is going to be surprisingly better than we think. Who knows? but I highly recommend you watch the trailer just to see the pure cheesiness of what this movie could be. So there you go. The Hurricane Heist is one of the trailers of the week. The next trailer of the week, which is the big trailer of the week and probably one of the bigger news items of the week as well, if that's how I structured my show, it is, if I didn't have obviously two separate categories for trailer talk and for movie news items. But the new trailer for Pacific Rim Uprising came out this week, and it showed off a lot more action than the first trailer. The film stars John Boyega as the rebellious Jake Pentecost, the once promising Jaeger pilot whose legendary father gave his life for humanity's victory against the kaiju years before. Jake has since abandoned his training only to be caught up in the criminal underworld. However, when an even more unstoppable threat is unleashed, he is found by his estranged sister, Michael Mori, played once again by Riko Kikuchi, who is leading the new generation of pilots and is given a chance to join the new fight. Like I mentioned, the trailer shows a lot more action. There's a lot more story to it, and it's pretty. I don't know if it's the same, pump up worthy like the teaser that came out late last year. But this trailer is definitely good. If you're a fan of Pacific Rim, I think you'll enjoy this one. So again, not only does it give us a bunch of new shots, we get a really good idea of what to expect from the sequel, action-wise. Arguably, they could have left something out of the trailer. There is a possible kind of traitor among us kind of storyline, I guess they're going with in the movie, and that was teased before. There was a set visit reports that came out late last year as well for this, and they and pretty much all those had the fact that they may be not necessarily a traitor among us, but there's something definitely that's going on behind the scenes that kind of puts everyone else in danger. So arguably they could have left that out, but everything they've given us so far with this trailer and with the teaser so far, I really love it. I love the first Pacific Rim. I can't wait for this movie to come out. This trailer just pumped me up even more. There's this amazing shot of one of the Jaegers, the one with the whip. And it looks like he's whipping the kaiju, and the kaiju catches it somehow and just starts whirling him around. And the Jaeger's just crashing into buildings. It's just one of those really cool shots where you're just like, I can't wait to watch that on the biggest screen possible. Or maybe it's just me, who knows. But I'm looking forward to this. This is definitely one of my most anticipated movies of the year. So Pacific Rim Uprising, the new trailer has been released. The movie will be directed by Stephen S. Dynamite, who is taking over from Guillermo del Toro. Del Toro is still attached to the project. He is an executive producer on it, but he didn't have enough time to direct this project. So Stephen S. Dynamite, who was the showrunner for all the Spartacus shows on Starz, and the season 1 showrunner for Daredevil on Netflix. So he's taking over the director's chair for this. Pacific Rim Uprising opens later this year on March 23rd. We'll definitely be talking more about Pacific Rim Uprising once the movie gets closer to the release date. Or once we get closer to the movie's release date.
This is the way the world ends.
How'd they get into our world?
Someone let them in. Someone from our world.
Who is that?
Definitely not one of ours.
Let's do this.
This is your chance to make things right.
We're gonna need more pilots.
We have him.
There are pilots we remember as legends, but they didn't start out that way. They started out like us. This is our time to make a difference. Do you understand? Jaeger pilots, do you understand?
One way to find out.
That's what I'm talking about!
Alright, so that's it for trailer talk. There are 2 other trailers that came out this week. There's a new trailer for Disney's A Wrinkle in Time. That came out. I didn't watch it. I think I got my fill for A Wrinkle in Time. I heard the trailer was very good, though. So you want to go check that out. The link to that is down below in the description area. Also, new trailer for, or the first trailer I should say, for a comic book, a graphic novel adaptation called I Kill Giants has also come out. That looks very good. I actually read the graphic novel, and I don't know if it definitely feels like they added stuff to the movie, but it looks like it's just going to be stuff that helps out the overall story. And I like some of the things they've added so far, at least from the trailer, obviously, from the graphic novel. If you haven't read the graphic novel, I highly recommend you do. It's the same name, I Kill Giants. Highly recommend it. Some of the stuff that they pulled off in the trailer, even though it feels like a very smaller movie. It's not this big budget studio movie. It's really essentially an independent movie, and some of the effects they pull off on here are fantastic. So I definitely am looking forward to that. So yeah, those are the trailers that came out this week. Obviously, all the trailers are linked down below in the description/show notes area. If you want to go check that out, you're more than obviously welcome to. Try to make your lives a little easier. Alright, so let's move on to this week's news items. So we're going to just speed past some of these because they're very quick news items. So I don't want to spend too much time on them. Speaking of trailers, this is kind of connected to trailer talk in its own little way. The second trailer for Deadpool 2, which will be its official trailer, since the last trailer we saw was really more of a teaser, will be attached to Black Panther. So if you needed any other reason, if you needed it for any reason whatsoever, if you needed any other reason to go watch Black Panther when it comes out next month, now you have one, because the official trailer for Deadpool 2 will be attached to Black Panther. Now, of course, Black Panther comes out on February 16th, and trailers usually drop online before then anyway, and it looks like Fox will be releasing the trailer online on Valentine's Day, which is the Wednesday of that week. Valentine's Day actually holds a very special place for Deadpool, because Deadpool actually came out on Valentine's Day weekend, so there is that kind of a little anniversary, if you will, for Deadpool. So there you go. Second trailer, the first official trailer, whatever wording you want to use, will be attached to Black Panther. Deadpool 2 will open on May 18th. If you remember, 2 weeks ago we talked about that Deadpool had its release date shifted up to May 18th instead of June 1st, because I guess Fox just wanted to get it out earlier, wanted to give us an early, very early, or late Christmas present, however you want to look at it. So we're going to be sticking to Fox just a little bit. The New Mutants rating has been revealed. The X-Men spinoff, The New Mutants, recently took a hit earlier this year when it was announced that it would be pushed back from its release date in April to next year in February. However, the reason was not because the reason wasn't because anything was bad with the movie. The reason was because they wanted to make the movie scarier. Writer-director Josh Boone revealed previously that the movie was going to be more of a horror movie than the typical superhero movies that we see. And in a recent chat with Empire Magazine, Boone confirmed that the film will be PG-13. However, he did stress that they were pushing the limit of the rating as far as they can, and also stressed once again that the movie wasn't the normal superhero movie, saying, quote, "There are no costumes. That alone makes it different. They can't be with the other kids at the X-Mansion. They're too fucked up. They've killed people, whether intentionally or unintentionally," unquote. So I was really looking forward to seeing the New Mutants this year. I was really bummed out when I reported on that, when I read it. But I'm okay with waiting. If they're going full on with the horror genre aspect, I think that's great. I know the PG-13 rating will probably turn off some fans and have people that were already spectacle. They were already what was I trying to say? They were already. The spectacle was not the word I wanted to use, and now I can't think of the word. People who were already on the fence about it. Just say that, because I can't think of it. People who are already on the fence about the New Mutants, hearing the rating, they probably are gonna just turn away from the movie whatsoever. But PG-13 10, 15 years ago is not the same PG-13 now. You can get away with a lot in the PG-13 movie nowadays. And if they're going to push the limits of PG-13, then I'm fully okay with that. Also, the New Mutants, it's not a brand name. No, not everyone knows who the New Mutants are. It's not like an X-Men, where it's not a Logan or a Wolverine. The New Mutants are people that not everyone knows, so they want to get as many people as they can into the movie. And not only that, it's a horror movie. So if you walk into basically a horror movie that's not that scary, especially if it's a PG-13 movie, you're just pissing off every fan imaginable. So I'm okay with the wait if that's what they're gonna do. I'm a little bummed out, but again, I can take it. And again, you can get away with a lot in a PG-13 movies nowadays than you could 10, 15 years ago. So I'm okay with that. So New Mutants will open, like I mentioned, next year on February 22nd. So we'll have to wait a little bit longer for that. So let's move on to the next movie news item. This is another quick one that we can talk about. Michael Jai White went on Twitter earlier this week, and just again recently, the other day, and gave his followers and fans a very big tease to one of his popular, and I would say underrated movies, and one of my favorite movies of all time, Black Dynamite. Now, for those of you unfamiliar, 2009, Michael Jai White wrote and starred in a blaxploitation parody film called Black Dynamite, where he played the character of Black Dynamite. And it's one of those movies where I think the less you know about the movie, the better it is, the better viewing experience you have. I will say it is an action comedy, and it has a massive cult following, including myself. And it even earned a brief animated series on Adult Swim, so there is that. And it looks like maybe we'll finally be getting a sequel. These brief little videos he's been posting online are like 10 seconds long, and whatever it is, if it's a movie sequel, it's a TV series, or if it's going to be on a streaming service or whatever, we do know one thing: it's coming out this year, because all the videos end in 2018. So hopefully we don't have to wait too long for some longer videos, an announcement of something. Again, if you haven't seen Black Dynamite, I highly recommend it. It's one of those movies you will not regret watching, and knows exactly what it is. It's one of the most funniest movies I've seen. It's just one of those movies where you watch it and you're like, why did I wait so long to watch it? It's a great movie. It really is. I can't praise it enough. So I just wanted to mention that because, again, it's my podcast, and I can mention whatever movie news items I want. But I hope that this turns out to be a Black Dynamite 2, because I know a lot of fans have wanted it. I know Michael Jai White has wanted it. So we'll see what happens with that. All right, so let's move on to the next movie news item, and that is Duke Nukem. That's right, you heard me, Duke Nukem. There is a Duke Nukem movie in the works over at Paramount Pictures, along with Platinum Dunes, the studio that, of course, has bought us movies like the Purge movies, the Ouija movies, and the upcoming A Quiet Place. They are developing a big screen film of the long-running video game franchise, Duke Nukem, and the person they're already in talks to star for the movie, that was a poorly constructed sentence I just said to myself. I didn't write that down. That was me. So the person they're in talks with to star in the movie is none other than
John Cena.
That's right. For those of you unaware about the character, Duke Nukem first arrived in 1991 as a. This is one of the descriptions that I saw, that it was probably one of my favorite ones. A quote: muscular cigar chomping man who always wears Ray-Bans and sports a flat top haircut as he fights aliens to save planet Earth by using enormous physical strength and his expertise in firearms. That was probably one of the best descriptions I could find about Duke Nukem. The character has appeared in over 19 games, with the most recent being Duke Nukem 3D World Tour that came out a handful of years ago. So Cena, mostly known for his career in the WWE, obviously, has been making the movie kind of a lot more frequently to the big screen. Of course, he starred in a lot of the WWE movies like The Marine and 12 Rounds, but he's made his jump over to the studio movies like Trainwreck, the Daddy's Home movies, The Wall. He's most recently lent his voice to the character of Ferdinand in the animated movie Ferdinand. He's also going to be in Blockers, coming out later this year, and he's going to be in the Transformers spin-off Bumblebee. So he's he's making, his move over to the big screen and having less and less time in the WWE. So there is that. There's no writer or director attached yet. The movie is in development, and they have John Cena in talks. But I can only assume if they get John Cena to get on board, that there will be a writer and director attached fairly quickly. I don't know how I feel about a Duke Nukem movie, because if you go up and you look up Duke Nukem, there are characters that are very controversial, let's put it that way. And some of the games have been very controversial as well. If you look up Duke Nukem controversy, you'll find articles and upon articles of just how the character has just gone up against parents and everything else. So Duke Nukem character, very interesting. The surrounding him with the parents and kids and fandom, also very interesting. So I don't know how they'll pull off that movie, but do you get a guy like John Cena on board, I will be in line to go watch it. So yeah. All right, so those are the big movie news items I want to talk about this week. There are other news items that we didn't get to this week, but if you want to go learn more about those movie news items, you can go over to the Facebook page. There's a link down below for the Facebook page, or just go to facebook.com/moviepit, facebook.com/moviepit. But again, there's a link down below just to make it easier for you guys. So a few news items that we didn't talk about on the podcast. The voice cast for The Incredibles 2 has been rounded out. They did this very interesting thing where they reveal the cast through the new internet kind of sensation, which is the Google Arts and Paints or something like that app, where you send a picture of yourself and they match you up with a painting that looks exactly like the picture you just sent. So that's kind of interesting. So they did that for the revealing the new cast. They had the original voice cast, like Craig T. Nelson, Holly Hunter, and the two kids, or now they're kind of teenagers, who are voicing the characters of Violet and Dash. But they revealed the new voice cast members. You have Bob Odenkirk in there. You have Catherine Keener, Jonathan Banks, Sophia Bush, and Elisabella Rossellini is in the cast as well. So there's that. They also gave the description of who they're playing and kind of where they stand and everything. There is also the news item of a possible new RoboCop movie. And I didn't put that into the main movie news cycle because I don't know where this will fall, because the original writer of RoboCop, the 80s one directed by Paul Verhoeven, he is writing a continuation of, that's the word he used, a continuation of RoboCop. Basically, kind of the way he put it was that it was going to be a continuation of the first movie, basically making it a true sequel and ignoring all the other movies. That's kind of what it sounds like. So he's only writing it right now. It's not green-lit or anything, so that's why I didn't include it over here. Another news item that's up there, if you want to go to the Facebook page, is that Universal's Dark Universe, the one with all the Universal monsters like Dracula, Wolfman, the Mummy, and all that, it took another hit this week, and they lost a writer, or the writer, I should say, to The Invisible Man. So he released a statement and he said all this stuff, and again, it's all up over on the Facebook page. I want to go check that out. But this one hurts a little bit, because if you listen to the podcast enough, you know that I was a huge supporter of the Dark Universe, and then I saw The Mummy, and that things went downhill, like it's going downhill right now for Universal and their Dark Universe. Ryan Reynolds is also set to produce and star in a new adaptation of the board game film Clue. So they're going to make a new Clue movie. It will not be a remake or a reboot of the Tim Curry one that came out, I believe, in the late 80s. But it's going to be a brand new thing. So he's producing it. Ryan Reynolds is producing it. He's going to star in it. So they're doing that. And Warner Brothers is planning an animated Dr. Seuss film series. So it's going to be all these basically just kind of adaptations of all the Dr. Seuss I don't know about all of them, but majority of them probably Dr. Seuss movies, and they're starting off with The Cat in the Hat first. So those are some of the news items that we didn't get to talk about here on the podcast. So there is that. So we're going to finish off the movie news items with the big movie news item of the week, and of course, that is the Academy Award nominations. So like every year, of course, the list is there's some prizes on there, there's some snubs on there, there's some omissions, there's some people that there's some history making there. It's all over the list, and every year there's always these other lists of people that got snubbed, people that should have been nominated, people that shouldn't have been nominated, and all this stuff. And this year's no different. So I'm gonna read off the nominee. I'm not gonna read them all off because I am gonna do a separate podcast for the nominations as we get closer to the actual Academy Awards. But I'm just gonna read a few of them, a few of the categories off here, and then afterwards I'll go into some stats about the Academy Awards and nominations, who got left out, who people think should get nominated, and some very interesting tidbits and facts and trivia about this year's nominees. So the best visual effect nominee. Our best visual effects nominees are Blade Runner 2049, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Kong Skull Island, Star Wars The Last Jedi, and War for the Planet of the Apes. Best original score, the nominees are Hans Zimmer for Dunkirk, Johnny Greenwood for Phantom Thread, Alexandre Desplat, I think that's how you say his name, for The Shape of Water, John Williams for Star Wars The Last Jedi, and Carter Burwell for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. The nominees for Best Animated Film are The Boss Baby, The Breadwinner, Coco, Ferdinand, and Loving Vincent. Best Cinematography, nominees are Roger Deakins for Blade Runner 2049, Bruno Del Bono, I think that's how you say his name, for The Darkest Hour, Hoyt von Hoytema, I think that's how you pronounce his name. I will learn how to pronounce these people's names by the time we do all the Oscar nominations for that separate podcast. For Dunkirk, Rachel Morris for Mudbound, and Dan Laustin for The Shape of Water. We can skip the screenplay. I'll do that when we get to the actual podcast. Best Supporting Actress, Mary J. Blige for Mudbound, Allison Janney for I, Tonya, Leslie Manville for Phantom Thread, Laurie Metcalf for Lady Bird, and Octavia Spencer for The Shape of Water. Best Supporting Actor, William Dafoe for The Florida Project, Woody Harrelson for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, Richard Jenkins for The Shape of Water, Christopher Plummer for All the Money in the World, and Sam Rockwell for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri as well. Best Actress nominees, Sally Hawkins for The Shape of Water, Frances McDormand for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, Margot Robbie for I, Tonya, Saoirse Ronan for Lady Bird, and Meryl Streep for The Post. Best Actor, we have Timothy Chalamet, I think that's how you say his name, for Call Me By Your Name, Daniel Day-Lewis for Phantom Thread, Daniel Kaluuya for Get Out, Gary Oldman for Darkest Hour, and Denzel Washington for Roman J. Israel Esquire. The Best Director nominees are Christopher Nolan for Dunkirk, Greta Gerwig for Lady Bird, Jordan Peele for Get Out, Paul Thomas Anderson for Phantom Thread, and Guillermo del Toro for The Shape of Water. And finally, the Best Picture nominees for this year's Oscars are Call Me By Your Name, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, Get Out, Lady Bird, Phantom Thread, The Post, The Shape of Water, and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. So all that said, obviously, again, I didn't read all the nominees. I will read all the nominees and who's nominated for a separate podcast that I will do closer to the actual Oscars, which are in the beginning of March. So I'll do all that later. Of course, you can look up all the nominees. I'll put a link down below if you want to see all the nominees to make it easier for you guys, so you don't have to search. Try to make your lives a little easier every day or every podcast. So all that said, some facts and some trivia and all this stuff about the Oscars. The Shape of Water actually leads the pack in nominations at 13. Dunkirk with 8 nominations and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri with 7, and all the rest of the movies are like 6 and 5 and stuff like that. So nothing out of the ordinary for the nominees. All the nominees are pretty much what we expected. There are a few snubs or not. I want to say snubs. I want to say omissions. I prefer omissions compared to snub. In some cases, it will feel like a snub, but I think for me, I think this year I will just say omissions. So let's just get right to it. Many thought that Armie Hammer would get nominated for Best Supporting Actor, but it looks like they probably gave his nomination to Christopher Plummer for All the Money in the World, which I found very weird. I don't know what's going on there, but we'll leave it at that. Holly Hunter was on some people's list for Supporting Actress for The Big Sick, but looks like or whoever was also nominated for that. Hung Chao, or at least I pronounce her name. Her performance for Downsizing. Some people thought that maybe she should have got a nomination for Best Actress or even Best Supporting Actress. Jessica Chastain for Molly's Game was another one that people thought kind of missed the list. Some people were saying that even Tiffany Haddish maybe got a snub for her performance in Girls Trip. I don't know if necessarily she was in the running for that, but there was some lists out there. I try to look at as many lists as possible for how people were feeling about the nominations, and some people had her on there. But yeah, the director for Call Me by Your Name was also an omission that some people got. That was Luca Guadagnino, I think that's how you pronounce his name. But he was a director that got potentially snubbed in some people's eyes. The Florida Project missed out completely on a lot of these nominations, which some people thought that was definitely a snub for some people, with the exception, of course, of William Dafoe, who got nominated for Best Supporting Actor. I, Tonya and the Disaster Artist also missed the cut for Best Picture. That was another one that people thought was kind of not necessarily strange, but at least noteworthy. Some of the other big ones, of course, James Franco being left out of Best Actor. Obviously, the allegations against him recently probably had something to do with that. Something recently just came out. Casey Affleck, who won Best Actor last year, will not be presenting the nominee for Best Actress. That's usually how it works at the Oscars. Last year's winners usually will award the Oscar to the new winner. So Casey Affleck was going to essentially give out the Best Actress award to whoever won, but that is no longer the case. He will not be doing that. So of course there was allegations against him last year when the Oscars came out, so that's why it was a big deal. So he will not be doing that this year. He will not be doing the Oscars this year. So obviously James Franco being left out, the allegations against him have been costing him a lot. There was a Vanity Fair shoot for some people, and he was left out. Obviously his performance in The Disaster Artist got some nominations everywhere else, but not the Oscars. Steven Spielberg and Martin McDowell for Best Director. They directed The Post and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. That was some people's omissions. Of course, The Post didn't get a lot of nominations at all, with the exception of Best Picture and Best Actress, which means that, yes, Tom Hanks did not get nominated. Neither did Liz Hannah and Josh Singer, I should say, for Best Screenplay. They were nominated last year for Spotlight, but they didn't get the nomination this year. That said, Meryl Streep has broken her own record with nominations. She owned the record for 20, now she owns the record for 21 nominations. So, way to go, Meryl, I guess. Speaking of records, though, John Williams, who received his 51st nomination, yes, you read that right, or heard that right, 51st nomination, broke his own record of nominations. He was at 50, giving him the record for the most nominations of any living person. That all-time title holder, because he's the second place, the other person is Walt Disney with 59. So, wow. Speaking of records, Christopher Plummer now becomes the oldest nominee at 88 years old. The previous owner of that record was Gloria Stewart, who was 87 when she was nominated for her Best Supporting Actress nominee in Titanic. Mary H. Ellis became the 6th woman nominated in the sound mixing category for her nomination in Baby Driver. So Baby Driver is actually nominated for a lot of technical awards, which it might win, but again, we'll talk about that when we get closer to the Oscars. Wonder Woman was completely shut out at the Oscars. Some people actually thought that it stood some chance of getting something, especially maybe even some of the technical awards. But Wonder Woman got completely shut out the box, which is not really that surprising. But I guess people were just upset about that. The Lego Batman movie and Cars 3 were not nominated for Best Animated Feature. Cars 3 is a Disney and Pixar movie. Those usually get nominated every year, but that privilege went to Coco, not Cars 3, which is probably the best option. Speaking of comic book movies, with Wonder Woman, Logan has become the first superhero movie to get an adapted screenplay nomination. That is, unless you don't include the Incredibles in 2004, but the Incredibles was a original superhero tale. But Logan has become the first comic book movie to get first superhero movie to get nominated for best screenplay animation, which is very, very, very cool. The Lebanese movie The Insult, which is a Beirut set courtroom thriller, is the first Lebanese movie to be nominated in the Oscars foreign language category. Want to show the foreign language movies some love, so that was a very nice thing to hear. Some first-time nominees. We have a lot of first-time nominees this year. Christopher Nolan. Yes, Christopher Nolan has never been nominated for Best Director, which for some people was very surprising. But Christopher Nolan finally gets his first Academy Award nomination. Margot Robbie, Timothy Chalamet, Daniel Kaluuya, Mary J. Blige, who is also nominated for Best Original Song. So she has 2 nominations there. Allison Janney, Leslie Manville, Laurie Metcalf, and Sam Rockwell. Also, all nominees for Original Screenplay are brand new people and have never been nominated for anything. So congratulations to them. And again, we'll get to that. We'll get to all those nominees as we get closer to the release date, or as we get closer to the Oscars. Rachel Morris, who is nominated for cinematography. She is the first woman, believe it or not, to be in Oscar history to be nominated for cinematography, which is amazing. That is, first of all, amazing and unbelievable that that is it. So Rachel Morris is the first woman to be nominated in Oscar history in the cinematography category for her work in Netflix's Mudbound. By the way, Rachel Morris, fantastic cinematographer, because she did the cinematography for Dope, for Fruitvale Station, and for Black Panther, where she breaks another record because she makes history as the first woman cinematographer in any superhero movie. So, way to go, Rachel Morris. Speaking of Mudbound, since we're speaking about Mudbound a little bit, Dee Reese is the first African-American woman to be nominated for writing an adapted screenplay. She co-wrote, actually, Mudbound. So, there's that. Greta Gerwig became the 5th woman director to ever be nominated. Yes, there's only been 5 women who have ever been nominated for Best Director, and she is the 5th one. She joins Lena Wetmüller, who directed Seven Beauties, Jane Champion, who directed The Piano, Sofia Coppola, who directed The Lost in Translation, and Catherine Bigelow, who was nominated and won for The Hurt Locker. I don't remember if Sofia Coppola won for Lost in Translation, but I actually should have looked that up if any of these women won. I don't think they did, but with the exception of Catherine Bigelow, who I knew won, because I remember watching the Oscar and I remember was being very happy that she won for The Hurt Locker. But Greta Gerwig becomes the 5th woman to ever be nominated for Best Director. Jordan Peele's nomination also is awesome. That's his first time nomination, but it also marks him as the first African American who has been honored with not only Best Director, but also Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay. He is also the 3rd director to hit the trifecta of Picture, Director, and Original Screenplay, joining James L. Brooks for Terms of Endearment and Warren Beatty for Heaven Can Wait. Beatty ended up losing all 3 of the categories, while Brooks won all 3 of the categories. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Jordan Peele does that. Also, Jordan Peele is only the 5th African American to earn a director nomination. The others are Barry Jenkins for Moonlight, Steve McQueen for 12 Years a Slave, Lee Daniels for The Butler, and John Singleton for Boys in the Hood. John Singleton was actually the first African American director to be nominated all the way back in 1991. None of them, by the way, have won. So Jordan Peele's in a very tough category there, and he's also in a very tough category anyway with other directors there. So it should be interesting to kind of see how that turns out. On top of that, Get Out joins the handful of horror movies to ever get nominated for Best Picture. The others are the 1941 horror film Suspension, 1945's Spellbound, 1944's Gaslight, 1973's The Exorcist. Yes, The Exorcist was nominated for Best Picture. 1991's The Silence of the Lambs, which actually took home the Oscar, and 1999's The Sixth Sense. Lady Bird is the 13th film directed by a woman to ever get nominated for Best Picture. That's right, 13th film to get nominated for Best Picture that was directed by a woman. It's also the 4th movie written and directed by a woman to get nominated for Best Picture and Best Writing. So there's that. All that said, the women this year have gotten a lot of the love, and rightfully so, because women have a grand total of 40 nominations this year, which nearly ties it for the record that was put in 2016. So this is crazy amount of nominations, and rightfully so, because the women busted their asses this year to break barriers, and they deserve all the love they can get. So congratulations to all the women out there. So the Oscars will air on March 4th, which is later than usual. The Oscars usually air in February. They probably would have aired in a few weeks, if that. But they're later than usual this year because of the Olympics. So there is that. So the Oscars will air on March 4th. They will be nominated. They will be hosted by Jimmy Kimmel. So that would be really cool to see how that turns out. Like I mentioned, we will be doing another podcast, probably a separate podcast. I don't know if it will be a separate one or it will be connected to the End of the Week podcast, but we will be doing a podcast segment or whole podcast about the Oscars. We'll be talking about all the nominees. We'll do our nomination picks, and then we'll see who was right and who was wrong. So, but we have quite a while to get to the Oscars, March 4th. So we'll wait on that. But I will definitely let you guys know when that will happen, and to get you guys involved some way. So there you go. If I missed any facts, which is highly possible, I will put those into the podcast, or you can let me know anywhere, social media or whatever. So, yeah, that's it. That's all the movie news items we have, at least at the time of this recording. Obviously, if anything big drops, I will put that up on the Facebook page. Like I mentioned, there is a link down below to the Facebook page. Well, would you look at that? That's not all the movie news items, because as I was about to edit this, kind of a big news item dropped. Mike Flanagan, the director of movies like Gerald's Game and Oculus, is going to direct a Stephen King adaptation, another Stephen King adaptation, because Gerald's Game was a Stephen King book. He is going to direct basically what is the sequel to The Shining. He is going to direct Dr. Sleep. So Dr. Sleep is based off a Stephen King 2013 novel, which is basically a sequel to the iconic book and movie The Shining. The story picks up with Danny Torrance as a middle-aged adult who's now inherited the alcoholism and the anger of his father, but when Danny gets sober, his psychic abilities return and a connection is made to a teenage girl named Abra with psychic powers of her own. So this is kind of interesting. This is actually kind of cool. Flanagan is a great director, and he's the way his movies are just structured, and the way he goes about directing movies is very interesting to me. I was a huge fan of the technical aspect of what he did with Oculus. I have not seen Gerald's Game yet, but I know a lot of people are very I've been speaking praises about that, especially in one particular scene, which has already got spoiled for me, but that's fine. So he's gonna direct a movie. He was also rewriting the script, apparently, that was written already by Akiva Goldsman, who previously wrote The Dark Tower, which is another Stephen King adaptation. So this is actually really kind of cool. Mike Flanagan also directed Hush, which was also another Netflix movie you can go watch. I really liked what he did with that as well. He also directed Ouija: Origin of Evil, which was also very good. Probably way better than Ouija, the first one. I never watched Ouija, the first one, but Ouija: Origin of Evil, which was a prequel to Ouija, was very, very good. I can't really wait. I think this is really cool. It will be done by Warner Brothers, who of course did It, another Stephen King property, which is very, very cool. Now there's no word yet on whether this will be a big studio release on the big screen or if it's going to be on a streaming service, but the fact that they're actually doing it sounds really, really cool. I have not read Dr. Sleep. I don't know anyone that has read Dr. Sleep, but I know that they've been trying to do something with The Shining for a while. A while back ago, they were going to do a Shining prequel called Overlook Hotel, which is of course the hotel from The Shining, and they were going to do kind of a little history, a prequel, obviously, of the events before The Shining happened. So, but that never happened, obviously, and there was no movement on it whatsoever, besides the fact that it was announced. But this is actually kind of cool. So there you go, Mike Flanagan directing Dr. Sleep, which is the sequel to The Shining. So it should be interesting to kind of see how that turns out. All right, let's get back to the podcast. All right, so let's get to this week's releases.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
All right, so we don't have a lot of releases this week. We have one expansion release this week, which is Hostiles, written and directed by Scott Cooper, who has directed and written films like Black Mass, the Johnny Depp one where he plays Whitey Bulger, Out of the Furnace with Christian Bale, and Crazy Heart with Jeff Bridges. This movie, Hostiles, is set in 1892. A legendary army captain reluctantly agrees to escort a Cheyenne chief and his family through dangerous territory. Christian Bale stars in this movie alongside Rosamund Pike, Wes Studi, Jesse Plemons, Adam Beach, and Scott Wilson. This movie looks really good, and it's been again, it's an expansion release. There's been a limited release all month. It's been rolling out week by week, but now it finally gets an expansion release this week. So if you haven't watched it yet, go watch it. I've been hearing some pretty good things about it, so this is definitely a movie that I'm gonna go watch this weekend if I get the chance. So there is that. So that's the expanded release. We do have one wide release, which is the Maze Runner, or just Maze Runner: The Death Cure. It is the final installment of the Maze Runner adaptation books. The Death Cure follows Thomas, played once again by Dylan O'Brien, as he embarks on a mission to finally take down Wicked, which is the company that they're fighting throughout the movie. So I've seen both Maze Runner movies now. I was very, very impressed and very surprised by the first Maze Runner movie. I thought it was really good. I was very surprised by how good it was, and how enjoyable it was. And then I saw the Maze Runner 2, or the Maze Runner: The Scorched Trials, and it wasn't very good. I mean, it was good up until it really wasn't. And then after that, it got to a point where it was like, all right, this movie has fallen down completely, and it cannot. And it didn't come up. It kept going down and down. So my hope is that Maze Runner: The Death Cure will be good. It's actually very long. Apparently, it's 2 hours and 20 minutes or something ridiculously long like that. Which I find very long for a final installment of a franchise that it almost didn't happen because Dylan O'Brien, of course, got into that very nasty accident on set that caused production to stop, and he came back afterwards. And kudos to Dylan O'Brien for even doing that. Yeah, I mean, that was one. Two, the Scorched Trials did not get a lot of fanfare with fans or with critics or even at the box office, but they stuck with it and they're doing this, so hopefully this turns out to be good. I'm hoping that they can recapture some magic from the first movie, but so far what I've been hearing, it's kind of a mixed bag. So we'll see how that turns out. So those are your releases for the week. Again, your new wide release is Maze Runner: The Death Cure, and your expanded release is Hostiles. And that's it, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast this week. There was a lot of news items that came out this week, so hopefully you guys enjoyed them. Obviously, if anything, again, like I mentioned, if anything big drops, you are more than welcome to go to the Facebook page to catch up on that. I do write movie news items that don't make it onto the podcast. A clear example of some of the news items I read, like the Incredibles 2 voice cast being rounded out. The original RoboCop writer writing a sequel, maybe. Universal's Dark Universe taking another hit. Ryan Reynolds starring and producing in a new Clue movie. And Warner Brothers planning an animated Dr. Seuss film series starring off with A Cat in the Hat. So those are some news items you will see over on the Facebook page. And of course, anything else that drops after this podcast goes up. That being said, thank you guys so much. Check out all the other links down below in the description/show notes area. You got all the links to the trailers that came out this week, which were the new Pacific Rim Uprising trailer, new trailer for Disney's A Wrinkle in Time, trailer for the graphic novel adaptation of I Kill Giants, and a trailer to probably one of the most ridiculous movies that is coming out this year, the Hurricane Heist. You got that down there. Also, while you're down there, if you're listening to this on YouTube, first of all, show me some love. I really appreciate it. Second of all, if YouTube is too inconvenient for you to listen, maybe you want to go on the road and you're like, I want to open up my Internet Explorer and turn on and go to the YouTube page, and then having just to play that over my phone when I want to do something else, you can listen to iTunes, because the podcast is on iTunes. I really appreciate it if you guys go give me a listen on iTunes over there. Really appreciate it if you go subscribe and also leave me a rating and a review. If you leave me a rating and review, I will read it on the podcast. Give you guys a shout out that way. I really appreciate it. It will help out the podcast in the long run. It would also help me out. Just to know that you guys appreciate what I'm doing for you guys here on the Movie Pit. So I'd really appreciate it if you guys go do that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. We're also on SoundCloud. If you want to go check that out, same thing, Movie Pit Podcast. And what else is over there? My WordPress account, which is where I do all my written reviews. I haven't done any written reviews for January. I've been watching movies. I just haven't done any written reviews for them. So that will change very soon in February. I got some other things that I'm working on. I just don't know how I'm going to release them, but I am working on some stuff to put up on there. Oh, what else? Twitter. I have a Twitter page for the podcast. I don't update it regularly. I'm trying to update it regularly. I just don't do it. But for whatever reason, if there's no podcast this week, it's going to go up on the Twitter page. So I highly recommend you go follow the Twitter page if you'd be so kind. And which is at Movie Pit Podcast, by the way, just at Movie Pit Podcast. It's up there. There's a link. Is there a link? I don't think there's a link, but the screen name's on there. What is on there? My personal Twitter and my personal Instagram are also up there if you want to go give me a follow over there as well. So that's it. Everything else is down there. Go check it out. And I'm done. I'm going to stop babbling and rambling, because that's exactly what I'm doing, and I know what I'm doing it, and I'm still doing it. So I apologize for that. So thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. Hopefully you guys had a safe, fun week, and you guys continue to have a safe, fun weekend. And as always, be safe, have fun, and go watch some movies.
Whoop whoop! Yeah! Give it up! Movies!